Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Quest as we continue to dive into 5D perception. We've got Dr. James Moss back in the studio with us today as we take a look at all the amazing things that are happening in our society, in our world, in our community, those at 5D perception with us, and so many good things are happening, and there's such a positive energy flow that's manifesting, and we're excited to be a part of that. James, I'd like to welcome you here today, and I heard you've got some amazingly good news to share with us on the health front, as well as say hello to our guests.
Thank you, John. Wonderful to be here today, and yes, amazingly good news. This has been fortuitous. This year has really been unfolding. Really, really great stuff happening all around us. I'm in a great space right now and wish to share great health news. I'm cancer-free.
Wow, that is a miracle. I mean, you went from stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Yes.
Wow. And that's an amazing blessing, and I hope that I guess that's what the doctor told you, but it hasn't been fully confirmed, and they want to just make sure that they'll run some additional tests, but after your procedure today that you're all done?
Yes, over the last 90 days or so, they've been doing x-rays and blood work and lab tests for the last 90 days. They'll continue. There may be seeds floating around, but they want to make sure that they're innocuous seeds and not producing anything. But cancer-free, they can't find anything, which is wonderful news. That's really great.
Amen. That is exciting, James. So tell me, how are you feeling spiritually as well as physically?
I'm in a new place, John. I'm in a really good place. And, since we've been, since you've been doing these podcasts for the last few years and things are evolving, I'm finding myself in a new place. I wanted to share that. And share that this is a wonderful time, and it's also eye-opening for me. This year has been really an evolution of things. I'm kind of blossoming now, and feel things coming forth. I've never been in this place before, so I definitely want to share some things today. Some things, and even not just a feeling, but a healing is coming through. And it's definitely 5D. I know that because it's not of a 3D nature. It's, it's just a love and overflowing that I feel is just, saucers are made for cups. It's not just for me, but for sharing it with others.
Excellent. So this 5D, for those who are perhaps listening to this podcast as one of their first listens, 5D is a perspective. It's a place that we are discovering, and there are more and more people coming to this 5D perception. We have a little tagline, "Are you at 5D yet?" You're invited. And 5D is about how we address and how we interact with life. And we have been in a 3D matrix, which we call our regular world, where we go to work every day and we deal with all of our problems and we surf the internet. And we have this way about interacting with life that's very reactive. We have the external world sending triggers to us or sending information at us, and we are almost a puppet to that external stimuli. 5D is when we discover within ourselves this place of contentment, of wholeness. It's awareness, really. It's being aware that we are aware. And from that awareness, we see ourselves as individual players in the matrix of life. And we use our avatar, our controller, which is our body, to interact with the world around us. But 5D awareness is that we see and we interact with the 3D matrix from this higher perspective, 5D perception. Are you at 5D yet? You're invited. If you check out our Facebook page, The Spiritual Quest, you'll see that we're constantly adding new voices to this choir, so to speak, of those who are just discovering their own pure, true essence. And from that spiritual place of purity and that spiritual place of wholeness, information is just bubbling forth. And it's like as people align with their heart and they align with their thinking, and those two things come into sync, they call it heart-mind coherence, life changes. And life bubbles forth from you in a way that you're inspired, and you're inspired in a way that's unique to you. Like there's a unique role that each one of us plays in revealing the 5D perception, because each one of us is an avatar in the game, but 5D sees the whole game, sees everything happening simultaneously, because we are in fact acting from awareness. And so many people are now discovering their 5D essence, their desire as to what it is that they're wanting to do. And they're knowing it's what they want to do because it's in line with their heart. It's not about money. It's not about prestige. None of those things. It's a place of purity and wholeness that is from within, which, by the way, may include money and it may include prestige. Those things are part of our reality. But it's the idea that we're living from a spiritual place of awareness, a spiritual place of enlightenment. And this has been talked about by every religion and every guru and the scientists and quantum mechanics, all of this stuff. This is what 5D is. And I'm going to invite you now to share some of your discoveries as to what, you've been experiencing personally.
John, it's been an evolution for me. It's been a journey, and things that have helped me along that journey, things have accompanied me. I've had passengers along the way, unsuspecting passengers. I think we all go through a personal evolution along the way. Things kind of help you evolve. For me, it was a health journey. That was a big part of it. Because it took me along a spiritual, emotional, and a physical journey. So my first rodeo, I'd never gone through those things. Losing over 100 pounds in weight, not necessarily in a good way, but having gone through a number of things, meeting other people who had similar situations, physical and health challenges. Some didn't make it, and getting close to them and their families personally, and like I said, they didn't make that. However, I pulled through, and not undeservingly, but wondering why me? Why did I make it through and they didn't? Thinking, well, and looking back at the whole thing, I'm no one special. However, I made it through. There's got to be a reason for that. And my doctor, I came from oncology here, directly here, my appointment this morning. My doctor was fascinated. He said, well, you've gained a few pounds. I told him, well, I had problems up and down with weight. I had to take a few injections to get my white blood cell count up when I was going through chemo. And I was weighing 160s and getting back to, 170s. We've gained about 10 pounds, but he looked back over the span of things and said, well, let's see what you weighed several months ago. Wait a minute, you weighed 265? You lost over 100 pounds. He said, well, okay, I see. He was fascinated by it. He was, okay, well, you really lost some weight. I said, yeah, it's been a journey for me, an up and down roller coaster. And he said, yeah, you've been through something. And, looking back at it all, but these things helped me to evolve mentally, spiritually, emotionally on my 5D journey, coming out of the 3D experience. And coming out of that, I don't know if you remember, John, you remember the old iPod days. We were listening to WIFM, and that was our favorite radio station. What's in it for me? We had that attitude. But now we expand our self-awareness to others. And the love that's flowing, the space I'm in now, so different than in those times, than in years ago. We're into a new evolution of things. We're into a new time. This is a different era, a dawning of a new age, and we're seeing our perceptions changed. Um, it's for everyone, not just ourselves.
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Yes,
Something like that.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, well, there's massive, massive changes taking place. And to many people, it may be perceived as really fear inspiring because those of us who are still clutching to our 3D matrix securities, our job, our government job, our our religious community, our local community, our school boards, our government agencies, all of these things are just starting to come apart, and those are literally creating terror amongst those who are not in the 5D space, those who have not found their own inner place of security, their inner place of wholeness, that inner place of security and comfort, that awareness that you are life itself, and that you as awareness get to play the role of Dr. James Moss, and I get to play the role of John Weber, an author, and these are just experiences that we have, and they're transitory. They come and they go, and it just as life breathes in and breathes out, and our existence as 5D awareness is eternal. We realize that we have eternal life. That is the ultimate understanding. I call it Christ consciousness. Jesus said, if you believe in me, you will never die. You will not die. You will actually discover your relationship with life because you are in fact awareness. So you shared that you've had some friends who didn't necessarily have a particular outcome that you did. And what's your 5D perspective on that, James? How can you explain that to our audience?
Well, it's different for everyone, and my experience, for me, for my story, it's self-explanatory, but it's my message. It's from my heart. It's and you can feel it. You can feel it in my words, in my voice, and I know that the people who are listening, they can feel it heartfelt in themselves. It identifies, it resonates with their soul. It's speaking from my soul, and they can hear the truth in it. It's my own message going out in the universe in my own voice. It's only resonating with the people who can hear it, and it's for their ears. So I can only identify with the people who are listening and who can hear my voice, but it's from my deepest parts of my heart to the people who can feel it, and that healing goes out to them who need that message, who need to hear those words, and who need to feel that, to let them know that, like you said, John, it's not in who you think you are or some mirror image that's been painted to you or demanded of you, or you think that others see you as. It's who you really are inside. It's your true self. When you can look at yourself and look beyond the prison, behind the eyes, you see the bars that you painted for yourself. You're housed there, sitting on a bench inside your own soul. When you can break through those bars and become you and realize who you are, and you can finally step out into freedom and be who you are, you're eternal. You're a living creature that never dies. And you have to find out who you are and live for you and be able to experience you for the first time, to be all that you can be.
Well, that sounds like an amazing place to be. And for those who are in a place of discomfort, those who are looking or searching for spiritual answers for their dilemmas in life, oftentimes we get sucked in to whatever's happening around us. And obviously, as we find ourselves in stressful circumstances, if we find ourselves in interactions in life that cause discomfort, we can't stop that discomfort, right? But what we are able to do is we are able to face that, look at that, interact with that from a 5D perspective. That is, realizing that things are happening, realizing that there are certain feelings that arise within us, or there's stresses that arise within us. And oftentimes we feel like we need to take some kind of action to help fix something. But 99% of the time, what's happening to us in our life is happening. Now, in the event that we have some control over what we're doing, we should exercise that control so that we're going to potentially lead to as positive an outcome as we can obtain. But in reality, most of our life is not in our control. We can vote for a president, but you're one vote of hundreds of millions, So how many things in our life do we actually control? Almost nothing. The one thing we control is our spiritual relationship with our source energy. Our heart is our umbilical cord to that God space, to that awareness, to that consciousness, to that mind space, to that heart space, to that love space. And that is an internal spiritual thing. We have a book called The Spiritual Quest. And in that, we talk a lot about the personal journey that we go through individually to discover our own inner peace and our own inner spiritual balance, so to speak, that wholeness. And that's the first step. And that starts with loving ourselves and finding the way to love ourselves. And then, of course, the 5D perception is when we not only figure that out internally for ourselves, but we bring that perception to the rest of the world. So maybe you can comment on how that type of thought process or combination of words resonates with you, and opine accordingly.
John, I was on my way here, and I stopped at a light, and a guy rolled down his window. He was in a work van, and he was saying, "Hey, man, what do you do? What do you think?" He saw me the top down, and I was listening to Don Henley. I'm a fan of Southern rock. And I was just, drumming on the wheel there, and I was enjoying myself. I was waiting on the light to change, and, "Hey, man, what do you do?" I said, "I'm just enjoying life, my brother." and it's just getting into yourself, getting into who you are, and just enjoying the breeze. When it's 80 degrees outside, it's wonderful. The sun's up.
The blessings of being in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely, and just wonderful. Weather's nice, beautiful day. Just enjoying being here, and just enjoy being. That's it. It's flowing with nature, with life, and just going along with the flow, like a leaf in the tide of the river, just going along with the river, knowing it knows where it's going to go. You don't have to worry about a thing. You don't have to change a thing, turn, it just going with the tide.
Amen. And, reaching a point of understanding our own inner spiritual countenance, we really become whole with ourselves. There's things that we are attracted to. There are things that buzz in our belly. There are things that excite us. And by the way, there's not like a list of these things, because there's a list of your things, something that resonates with you. Maybe you're an artist and you love to paint. Maybe you're a musician and you love to create music, or you love to perform music. Maybe you're a teacher and you love to teach and you love to create new ways to instruct students. Whatever it is that feeds your soul, We call it your Friday night essence, if you will, if you think about neo-think and some of those thoughts of when you're doing whatever you would do on a Friday night because you're enjoying it. That's your Friday night essence, and you do it because you love it. And obviously, I've been involved in this 5D project that we've been on now for several months, putting together these videos and trying to orchestrate and organize disseminating this information. And for those of us who experience 5D, it's real easy. And it almost feels as if everyone's going to get it in a split second, and many do. Those who have not yet tapped into that, the fact that you're listening to this is an indication that you're that close. So for those who are not in that joy space all the time, is to realize whatever it is that's robbing you of that joy space, whatever it is that's robbing you of your Friday night essence, and maybe it's going to a job that you don't like, but life sometimes requires you to stay in that space. While you're in that space physically and you have to interact with the 3D matrix, because we do live in a 3D matrix. We do have to pay our bills. We do have to eat, sleep, and drink, and we have to take care of ourselves. And while we would all love to be rich and wealthy and have the most ideal life experience, the reality is no matter who you are, you can find somebody who has a life that's better than yours. And you can also find many people who have a life a lot worse than yours. So the 5D perception is realizing that inside of me, close your eyes and feel inside of yourself. And maybe you need to cry with how you feel inside, and that's okay, because that's truly acknowledging what's happening within you. And by allowing yourself to cry and allowing yourself to be hugged by whom? By you. Allow yourself to experience, allow yourself to be who you need to be, allow yourself to cry out or to let go of these things that are disturbing. Because discovering what does not resonate with us is equally as powerful as discovering what does. So 5D perception is really coming into alignment with who you are in your heart space, in your umbilical cord to source, where you feel amazing. What is it, your skill set? What is it that you do that makes you special? And wherever possible, try to remain in that space mentally and to hold on to that inner feeling that's attached to that wholeness. That's 5D perception. And we bring it into our own life, first by we figure out how to control our own environment, how we maintain our own balance in life. And once we master that, once we feel as if we've got all of our answers, and so many people are coming to this place now, and it's happening faster and faster. Once you get to that place, it's so easy to be able to bring that same love, powerful energy to every interaction in life. Even if you're interacting with somebody who's angry and is upset, it's kind of like you can go inside of yourself from this place of joy, from this place of awareness, and you can almost feel bad for somebody who's still struggling. They're still fighting for some social justice project, or they're trying to fix the world because the world is broken. That's not your job. That your job is only to take care of you and do your best within the place that you are. And by the way, when you do that, you are in fact healing the world. You are in fact a social justice warrior. You are in fact living those things from that place of purity, from that 5D perspective. And it's manifesting not only in your own life, but as you start touching others, this will start to create and metastasize into the new 5D perception. Are you at 5D yet? You're so invited.
John, I remember when I was very young, I wanted to learn martial arts because I was having a difficult time, especially with bullies, because I was very young in school, and when I started to take martial arts lessons, the sensei, he would take young kids like myself, And the first thing he'd have us to do is he said, don't try to fight back. Don't try to fight these people. The first thing you got to do is learn how to fall. I said, what? Well, learn how to fall? You match your best friend. And I equate that now to listening. The skill we have to develop is to listen, to learn, to hear what other people have to say, not to try to fight them, not to try to fight them with words, not to try to engage in a verbal judo or combat. Just listen. You hear so much, and you start to understand. And with listening comes understanding, and then you begin to understand. You begin to, the words are actually, they have meaning. They actually have weight. And you begin to understand, you begin to feel the feelings, your heart begins to resonate. You begin to empathize with that person. Then you understand you're putting on their shoes, and you begin to feel where they're coming from. So you begin to empathize, and you can, hey, I understand. It's heartfelt. Then you can understand, and then you can kind of resonate with where they feel, and you begin to empathize, and that's the first step. And when they understand that you understand, you're making some progress there. So learning how to fall and hit that mat the proper way without hurting yourself, without breaking something, you begin to understand, and the person say, hey, you're listening. You're actually listening to me. And that's the first breaking the ice there. And, that tuning fork begins to go off and the two resonate with each other. And then you begin to, like you said, find that place the person knows you're listening, and you begin to resonate with that, and that's the first step. Rather than fight the friction, you begin to get to a higher plane.
I think of words and how words carry energy and they carry weight, and words wrap around a spiritual feeling. So we develop a narrative around a spiritual energy that's flowing through us. So if our loved one, we discover that our boyfriend or our girlfriend cheated on us, immediately there's going to be a spiritual energy that rises from that. And we attach a narrative to it. But all that is, it's a feeling. There's a feeling, and you can call it jealousy, right? Or you can call it sadness. You can call it disappointment. You can call it angry. That spiritual energy that we feel, we attach a narrative to that so that we can share this feeling with those who are willing to listen to our narrative. Now, if you think about spiritually, if a person comes to you and maybe they speak a different language, you don't even understand the words that they're saying. But if you're in 5D awareness, you can sense whether or not that person is conveying words of love, words of jealousy, words of anger, words of disappointment, words of sadness, right? We can resonate in that space because that's what 5D is. And the words themselves are not that relevant beyond connecting to the person who's sharing it. Because when they're sharing their narrative, right, that's them. So obviously, if we hear a person shares a narrative that matches my own, I'm bonded with that person. I feel very close and very tightly connected to this person because the words that they're using to wrap around their spiritual energies are matching my own. So therefore, I'm bonded. I'm feeling connected. And that's friendship. And these things fly around us all the time. 5D is when we can listen to anyone tell their narrative, and we don't try to talk them out of their narrative, because maybe their narrative is the opposite of mine. As they start to tell their story, maybe it's something that doesn't resonate with me. Maybe when I hear that person tell their story, it's resonating with the bully who used to bully me. And that in and of itself will have a certain countenance and a certain energy that is going to interact with my countenance. And I call that me, meaning my relationship with listening, is part of the 3D interaction. But the 5D perception is I don't have to get caught up in the words. I can allow those words to flow. And because I don't grab them and I don't feel I have to wrestle with something that doesn't feel right with me, I don't have to engage it. All I have to do is smile and listen. And in many cases, if we don't want to listen, we don't have to lash out and say, don't tell me that, although you can. But oftentimes all we have to do is just turn away, change the subject. Recognizing the narratives, how narratives are attached to spiritual energies. The spiritual energies are what flow between us all the time. We all have these spiritual energies that interact with us, just like the wind blows and water flows. Our relationship with other people and our relationship with the world around us is experienced as spiritual energies. And that's all there is. And we attach whatever words we want to it. 5D perception is recognizing the spiritual energies and staying in a place that helps us to remain pure at our core. So we don't allow a person's narrative that contradicts our own to upset us. 5D, we listen to it. And we can, we can actually listen to it. And we can actually validate that that's the way that person feels. We can actually resonate with that person because we're not looking at it from our 3D ego. We're looking at it from 5D perception, and we realize that same spiritual energy that they're describing is also inside of me, just attached to different words. Making sense? 5D's perception. Are you at 5D yet? You're invited. That's the line.
Totally agree, John. It's such a well, it's not really much to say. You've said it all. It's an epiphany, and we often get trapped because we become hardened in our attitude, so to speak. And as we don't change our positions, we become unable to bend, and when we become rigid in our perspectives, and we don't change, we set ourselves up. It's like a tornado comes by and it snaps the most rigid tree, or the things that are inflexible. But the smaller, youthful reeds, they bend in the wind, and they're able to survive the storms. But the ones that snap and the ones that break are the ones that have the rigid attitudes, and they don't change. They're not flexible enough to bend this way and that, and to be able to change directions. They can see both perspectives. They can look at both sides of an issue, and they can kind of understand, because they're willing to, not be inflexible. But they can understand that we have to be able to be a little flexible and not be so inflexible that we can't see a different perspective or be willing to look at the other person's perspective, because there are two sides to every coin. And there may be multiple perspectives. There may be facets like a diamond. we don't understand. Some personalities may have multiple facets. And there are a lot of personalities out there today that do have multiple facets to it. And understanding where a person's coming from, that it requires time and patience. And it requires a lot of things in order to really, if we're truly interested in understanding that person or a situation, it has to be investigated properly. We can't just quickly judge a situation just like that. Snap judgments often lead to bad decisions because we don't take time to investigate them properly.
Right, and it's almost as if there's no one else but you. You're the only person here. You're the only person in the Matrix. You are playing every role because you're playing a role and you're offsetting that role by an interaction with somebody else, with something else. And you're choosing to dance with whatever that is. And so how do we dance with it? We can dance with it And I say we need to dance in the key that's being played. You need to resonate with the story. So some guy has some story that he's attaching to his spiritual energies, right? And we can sense that, and we interact with that. We dance with that. We have this yin and yang relationship with everything. We don't ever have to challenge anything. We just understand it with curiosity, right? And our understanding it is a 3D perspective. Like we bring in our own understanding as John Weber being, my avatar in the 3D world and interacting with business or whatever it is that I'm doing. And that's going to continue. That's not going anywhere. The 5D perception is being able to recognize that you are the awareness behind what's happening, and that no matter what is happening, I can dance with that in a way that works best for me, works best for them, works best for all of us. Because 5D perception is it's a magic key. It's a magic tool. It's the tool that works in every situation. It's really hard to even put the awareness of this into words, because the minute that you try to explain what this spiritual place of wholeness and oneness, what this 5D perception is, the minute that you try to put it into words, it kind of constricts the perception of it. But am I being too confusing for you, James, or am I making some sense?
Oh, no,
you
no,
with me?
you're making perfect sense, John. I was trying to equate that to an experience I had in Okinawa when I was a young serviceman over there, and we were just having fun, before we got deployed. A lot of times we would describe our jobs as hours and hours of boredom interrupted by moments of sheer terror. we were deployed as PJs, combat paramedics, but we set up mass units over there to medevac people back to the States, before places like Guam and Da Nang and everything were closed. But we were spelunking, cave diving, and was with this Patty certified instructor, and we were actually diving in the Black Sea. And told the story real briefly when we get sidetracked, but we were diving 60, 80 feet in the Black Sea, and we saw an atoll reef, and we dove, and it's past Okinawa, Naha Point. At one time, they had the Olympics over there, but it's deep diving places. The locals don't fish over there or dive over there because it's pretty dangerous. And we saw caves, and this guy. He taught scuba on the island, and we were diving into those caves, and we went maybe waist deep up to our belts, to dive and look in those caves, and we were actually going a little bit further and further into these caves, just not getting too much into a situation where you have to be pulled out.
Are you underwater?
Yes, underwater.
Underwater. And are you fully scuba gear? What's
just skin diving suits.
Skin diving with a snorkel or?
No, with rebreathers.
Okay.
Maybe 60, 80 feet.
Okay.
But just enough that you wouldn't have to use a full tank or anything. Deep dives, but not really 100, 120 feet dives that you really need full scuba gear. At any rate, we were just over there, and we dove into something. We thought it was a cave, and it wasn't. It turned out to be a big fish, a blubbery fish that was sitting on a rock and just inhaling plankton, just eating. But it was sitting there. And
how big was it?
600-700 pounds.
No.
And its mouth was open. It was just, just a tide going in and out. We thought it was the inside of a little mouth of a cave, so we went into what turned out to be its mouth. Silt and everything came out. When I came out, and the instructor guy, he went in first. It was three people on the dive. We had a little rubber boat up top, and the last person to come out was him, and it pushed Silt out, and we both got away, and we went maybe 30, 40 feet away, and this thing swam off, and we could see it in the deep moving fast. Oh my God, we went back up top, and we were all talking about that for days and talking, to our friends about that. And, man, you guys might have got eaten. So that kind of describes what you were talking about. My mind was there when you were talking just now, talking about being in sync with things and trying to describe the experience later on to people who just don't get it, who don't understand. You're in it. You're experiencing that at the moment. It's how some situations where you're caught up in the moment, you're experiencing these things, and people they've never been there. They've never experienced something like that. When you're caught up in the moment and things are actually happening to you, you're trying to describe what you're going through to people later on. It's like trying to describe a traffic accident. How do you describe time stopping or slowing down to the point to where you're experiencing these time slowdowns? Things are happening very, very slow in the middle of an accident. It's almost impossible to describe, impossible to experience unless you've actually been there. So that type of thing, or even experiencing, what's happening because you're seeing it in 5D. You're experiencing it and you're watching yourself go through these motions with someone. You're watching yourself talk. You're watching yourself interact with someone. You're watching everything go on. You're seeing it, but you can't stop it. You're watching it go on. You're watching interaction, and you're almost powerless to do anything about it because when you re-enter the conversation, you're there. You're engaging.
Excellent, James. Thank you for sharing that. And it's kind of like you notice when there's a tragedy, when something happens, like some people, they just come to total clarity and peace. Like, some people, they become 5D aware and they interact with their 3D world with their arms and their thinking and their training, right? But they are consciously at 5D because there's so much there and they cannot process it through the 3D matrix, through the little ego that's trying to keep track of everything.
Right.
And this is what's happening in our world right now. Our world is so explosively chaotic, but it's always been that way. The only difference is because we're all bombarded 24/7 with TV and internet and social media and cell phones and drama and chaos. We cannot process it with our ego mind. That's why we're going to 5D, because there's just too much. And it's almost like we're in a critical situation. Consciously, humanity is coming to 5D because that's who we are. And when we start collectively coming to 5D, our problems are going to become manageable by the collective, not by the individual. So we're not going to be arguing about solutions. And it's kind of like, we're going to know intuitively that someone is going to, at the 5D perception, someone's going to show up with the plan, and their plan is going to be so crystal clear that anyone who's in 5D is going to see that. And those who are resonating and attaching narratives to solutions, they're going to resonate with that. And we're going to be able to create compounding positive effects that's going to solve problems, and rapidly. And that's what's happening. But now those who are watching it and they're still holding on and they're still clutching to the drama, and they're trying to figure out and they're afraid of any decision that wants to be made. The problem is, by our putting energy into trying to manage things with our own thought processes and our own thinking and our own words, and we're going to orchestrate this and we're going to organize it and we're going to get it all set up and we're going to have a 5-point plan. All of that stuff is no longer working. That's gone. Those things are already gone. In fact, the system has already changed. We're already at 5D. The only question is, have you flicked that switch? Can you see yourself from that higher point of view? Because until you do, you are going to suffer dramatically, because the chaos is going to be chaotic until we let go. And by letting go, we come to 5D, and it's like, okay, here I am. What am I going to do? And by letting go, the expression letting go and letting God. It's like, okay, I'm letting go of trying to fix this. I'm letting go of trying to organize this. I'm letting go. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm at peace. I'm at peace. That's 5D perception. That's it right there. And thank you for pulling that out of me, James.
Well, you're right, John. It's going to take practice to get over the fear. And just as my sensei taught me long ago, you have to practice, practice, practice. And when you get more comfortable with it, you'll get over your fear of falling. You'll get over your fear. And you'll learn from repeated practice, practice makes perfect, that you can handle this. And you'll be able to handle more and more. Do you remember that commercial? It was a commercial about how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll.
James, you've mentioned this the last 3 podcasts. If you mention that or you mention porcupines and balloon factories,
okay. I won't do that.
We're going to be in trouble. But yeah, you've mentioned that numerous times. So, but make that point one more time for us, for those who didn't hear.
One more time for the repetition, because it may take 10,000 licks.
Repetition for emphasis.
And it emphasizes a strong point, because if you bite it and you try to cheat, and you try to quickly solve it. It's like so many people trying to get over their fears. You may destroy the one little key in there that helps you solve bigger problems. And in destroying that little key, you can't solve any more problems, because your fear will continue to latch on to you and grip you. And you won't be able to lick that little problem and have that habit of, hey, I stair-stepped it. I can handle little problems and I can handle big problems the same way. Like you mentioned biblical stories earlier, David, he learned to hunt early on. So when Goliath came along, he could handle Goliath. But he was taught early on to solve the little problems first, and became a hunter and had no real fear of Goliath, because he had a solution for Goliath, and was taught that to handle things early on, and just went with his went with the intuition, went with what God placed inside of him. And so just went with it. So he overcame that fear.
Right. And I, on the 5D stuff, when we start to see things from this 5D perspective, and because things are so chaotic and there are no single answers that we can comprehend, but someone will comprehend an answer to a problem. And that person, that's their role. And they will vibrate naturally in that space. They will be able to work in that, in obtaining that objective, in providing that solution, and it's going to feed their soul. They're going to know that this is where they belong. That's going to be their Friday night essence. They're going to thrive in being able to deliver that type of a solution to the collective, and that's going to take place in every dimension of our reality. Whether it's dealing with teaching children, or school systems, or our music, or our artistic skill sets, all of these things, we're all going to start to vibrate where we flow naturally, and where we flow naturally is 5D, and from that space, life is bliss. That's awareness. Sure, sometimes, our awareness is going to have to experience the physical realities of the 3D matrix, but we don't have to be wrestling that 3D matrix 24/7. We go to 5D perception and we watch the world unfold, and we flow with it, as you say, that like a leaf in a stream, and particularly during a storm. And if you're in rapids, or and you find yourself in a river that you're losing control, the worst thing you can do is try to get control. Try to say, I need to get over to the shore and I'm going to try to fix something. So you put your foot down, and before you know it, you break a leg. So in connection with the chaos, we just roll over on our back and we just go with the flow. We just go with the flow. And then pretty soon, something will arise, something will become clear, and all of a sudden we'll reach calm water. And then once we get to the calm water, then we have choices again. But during that chaos, and the chaos that we've been in, although collectively we're reaching this point of peace, as chaotic as it may feel, and by the way, this may last another 3 years, maybe another 5 years, before we collectively get a big sigh of relief as a society. But individually, 5D perception is right there for you right now. All you have to do is see it. You just got to tap in to seeing the world from your awareness space and realizing that you are not in control of much of anything. Very, very little are you in control of. And that's 5D perception. And once you realize that, and you realize I only have 3 decisions, and all the other decisions that affect my life are not really in my control. And once you can truly resonate with that concept and resonate with that idea, life becomes so less complicated. Things become so much easier. Things become so much more simplified. And also you vibrate in your own frequency. So you start to connect with your own heart umbilical cord to know what's right, what feels right. And by the way, you're going to resonate in that space, not only for yourself, but you're going to attract to you other people in that space, other people who vibrate in that frequency with you, because they're part of a collective. Just as cells collect together in a body, we're going to be collecting together in our spiritual heart spaces of finding our particular contribution back to the whole. And we're going to be working together with everyone that's in that heart space, working from that 5D perspective on that particular solution. We're not going to be arguing with somebody else who's working on another solution. We're not going to be vying for space. And maybe in years past, we had 2 different ideologies. We had one side dealing with one problem, or one country dealt with a problem, and another country dealt with the same problem in a different way. And so we become loyal to our country. That's all gone. So we are now one world. We are now one humanity. We now live as one living organism. And from this 5D perspective, our problems are ending. All of this stuff, I shouldn't say our problems are ending. Our stress and worry and anxiety with problems that literally occupy 99% of the population as they're fed this narrative and we're pumped in this anxiety space. No, we're collectively coming to 5D. We're collectively waking up to the chaos. We're collectively waking up to the government abuse, to all the craziness, and to the lies, and to the propaganda, and to the fraudulent business practices, and the the manipulation of our food industries and drugs and vaccines and all of these things that have been coming out that people have been talking about for a long time, the so-called propagandists. Well, we all know what's true. And from 5D, we can all sense what's right and what makes sense. And yes, there will be solutions. And when the first vaccine was created, there was a discovery, and it was a miracle. Then that whole concept was hijacked and was turned into a business enterprise, and information was fed, and information was fabricated, and narratives were built, and allegiances were created, and all of that stuff is part of the 3D matrix, and that is all crumbling. Right now it's all falling apart. But those truly at 5D who understand the science, who understand the abilities to actually do real science with real, honest, legitimate blind studies, so that they validate something is effective and they're not just caught in the moment or the excitement of the moment. So much of our world has become so sucked up in a vortex of endless, perpetual chaos. That chaos is now over. The whole thing is crumbling. And there's a peace to be had when you come to this 5D perception. And are you at 5D yet? You're invited. That's our punchline. That's our brand. Back to you, James.
Thank you, John. Well, you've summed it up. Excellent.
So it seems like we've reached the end of another podcast hour with Dr. James Moss and the 5D perception. We'd really love to hear from you. If you've got 5D concepts, please share them. Comment on our videos. Check out our Facebook page, The Spiritual Quest. We only have a few followers, but maybe you can become one of them. We have a Facebook page, The Spiritual Quest. We also have Rumble channel, The Spiritual Quest. We have a YouTube under Seeker Explorer. And you can check out our videos there. And again, this 5D stuff is brand new. And it's going to be growing and growing as we all collectively come to clarity of thought and we come to this higher perspective as we start collectively solving problems rapidly, and we experience a better life, because that's what 5D perception is. And you're invited. Thank you, James.
Thank you, John.
And thank you for listening.